Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Common and Chef here with Tom Castleman. Cannot wait for a great show. It's our college football preview. We'll run down every Power 5 conference, the mighty SEC, the Big 10, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12. I can't wait to talk all about it. We'll even give you some insight into some independent teams, maybe some group of 5 teams as well. So full preview. We'll have the Final Four. What we say, of course, is going to happen, or realistically, not quite going to happen, but we'll talk all about that. We'll tell you who's going to win the college football national title. Tom, I think you probably know who I'm going with. I can't wait to hear who you're going to go with. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about. Some of the best quarterbacks in college football. Actually, maybe we'll talk Heisman Trophy at the very end. I didn't even think about that. We can talk about the 2 guys, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud as well. So it's going to be a really fun show. I mean, it's going to be great. NFL is going to shine in our show in the weeks to come. NFL preview coming next week, by the way. But this week, it is all about the college game. We do have technically week 0 of college football this week. So actually, there is some football this Saturday, but the full slate of games starts next week. I can't wait to get into it, Tom. How are you doing on this beautiful, beautiful Tuesday afternoon in late August? This is the last show we're doing before we're fully into college football, and then not too far around the corner, NFL. So it'll be football Saturdays and Sundays for weeks to come.
Absolutely. Well, where we begin the show is in the Conference of Champions on paper, or not on paper, but in reality. That is the SEC, where we had the Georgia Bulldogs winning the title last year, home of our Mizzou Tigers as well. So that just really seems like the best place for us to begin with the college football preview. It's one of the 2 biggest conferences, obviously, Oklahoma and Texas, eventually going to be there. But this season, it is all about, can Georgia keep the momentum? Kirby Smart obviously getting one over on his mentor, on Nick Saban. Nick Saban famous for being able to defeat his former assistant coaches, coordinators, etc. But coming out into the season, we have Alabama in the AP Top 25, ranked as number 1. Georgia coming in at number 3. So definitely, still some good respect and propers. I mean, Georgia graduated a lot of great players on that national title-winning defense. But between the 2 quarterbacks, I mean, Bryce Young certainly looks more like the pro scout. But don't sleep on Stetson Bennett, because he has been proving doubters wrong all throughout his collegiate career. Maybe not necessarily a pro quarterback, but definitely fits in with a pretty good college quarterback by the time his career is over. So, Common, with the SEC, I mean, you could be going off the wall with these top 2 teams, but I think it pretty much comes down to these guys winning the conference.
Yeah, Texas A&M is the other team at number 6, but keep this in mind that A&M plays at Alabama. So Jimbo Fisher made all those comments about Nick Saban. Alabama lost to A&M last year. Safe to say that the Tide will get their revenge on A&M this year. A&M's got a huge recruiting class. I think they're 6th in the preseason poll, but I'm going to exclude them here. I'm going to say they get 3rd. It's going to be Alabama and Georgia in the SEC. So this is, a pretty tough debate, but I'm going to go with Alabama. I think that this team, this is the quote from Nick Saban. 2021 was a rebuilding year. They were rebuilding, Tom, and they won the SEC championship and lost in the national title game. Think about that. That right there is wild for Nick Saban to say. But guess what? It was probably true. They got a lot of young players last year, and they're going to be even better this year. 10 out of 11 starters back on defense, Tom. Will Anderson, best defensive player in the country. Dude led the league in sacks last year. As a sophomore, 17 and a half sacks last year. He wants to be a Heisman Trophy winner. So he's going to be great. Alabama has arguably the best coach in Nick Saban, arguably the best quarterback in Bryce Young, and arguably the best defensive player in Will Anderson. So here's the thing about Georgia. Georgia's going to compete, or Georgia's a great team, but they are losing 8 starters and 5 first-round picks from last year's defense. Number 1 pick, Trayvon Walker, one of them. He might not even have been the best player on their team last year defensively. So 5 first-round defensive players gone. Georgia's going to be really good because they had a lot of guys gone last year. Their recruiting class has been on par with Alabama as the best, but 8 starters on maybe the best defense ever, that's tough. Alabama does return, like I said, their key players. They've lost some guys too, but key players are back, and Young, Anderson, Nick Saban's back. I think last year, a major difference between them was, look, Georgia was the better team. Alabama had the better quarterback. This time around, I think Georgia's defense isn't going to be as dominant to compensate for that difference in quarterback talent. So I look for Alabama to win the SEC. I think they're both going to go undefeated into the SEC championship because Alabama hosts A&M. Georgia, the SEC East is easier. Georgia should be in good shape to win the SEC, run the table, both teams undefeated, SEC championship. Alabama wins, and then they both make the playoff. I mean, if Georgia has one loss and they lose to Alabama, I know it sounds like we're going very chalk, but this is what happened last year. They both made the playoffs last year. There's no reason to believe that they won't this year. But I look at this, Tom, I know it's the whole best talent versus greater overall talent. And we'll see who's got the greater overall talent. But on paper, I think Alabama's got the best offensive player in Bryce Young and even the best defensive player on these two teams with Will Anderson. And they have a lot of other good players. So give me the Tide to win the SEC, but it's going to be competitive.
Absolutely. I think just for the sake of a little bit of back and forth on this one, I'll actually go with Georgia simply for the fact that while Alabama is going to be hosting Texas A&M, that could still be a very tough game that Alabama might not end up winning, which means they might not even end up in the championship game. So if we're saying in a head-to-head matchup, that's going to wait toward later in the season. I think Georgia has a pretty good shot just by virtue of being in the East for the SEC, which still isn't a cakewalk, but certainly not having to face A&M is going to be a big thing. Just waiting till the title game to face Alabama, because I don't believe they're playing each other regular season this year like they did last year, which obviously was a point of contention for people saying, well, who should really be in the title game if one beats the other? And it was a bunch of conversation. This year we're going to be spared all of that. I think we could definitely see both those teams in the college football playoff. But I kind of like Georgia in terms of what they've been able to do with replacing. Yes, they lost a lot of defensive players, but they are so deep, stacking up all these recruiting classes for the past couple of years that in a way it's going to feel a little bit almost like Alabama before Alabama got really good on offense, where they're just able to go through and replace all of these guys. And one thing that I think is a pretty significant advantage for Georgia is their tight end room. They have a lot of guys that are pro-level prospects that are going to be on the field in a decent amount of 12 personnel, I suspect. So that's going to be something where that's going to help disguise run versus pass and create a not necessarily pro-level offense, but this is college. Stetson Bennett can definitely thrive in that sort of situation. He can play in big games. I mean, won the title or was the starting quarterback, not necessarily, the sole reason, of course, but he did enough to win. He stepped up in big moments. This could be a season where he continues to take that step forward and cementing himself as a high-level college quarterback. So give me Georgia this season to overcome Alabama. It's going to be really, really close. So this is going to be something to watch all season, as both these teams are going on parallel tracks all the way to when we get to December and get those games going for titles. It's going to be a lot of fun to see later on in the year, but definitely, feels pretty chalky picking the defending champion or the reigning champion. Moving into the Big Ten, I think this is another one where we could probably go chalk on this one and be in agreement, just because I'm looking at the top 10. Sure, Michigan's in there, but it was pretty clear that there was a gap between Ohio State and Michigan last year. Do you think that the Wolverines have made up any ground, or do you think this is going to be same old story?
Well, a couple of things real quickly. Alabama and Georgia, I think, Tom, did not play each other in the regular season last year. They did play in the SEC
title game and then playoff, right?
Yeah, correct. But as far as Ohio State and Michigan, Ohio State has owned Michigan so much over the years, but Michigan did beat them last year. This case, though, this is almost sort of like, I'm going to go same as the SEC. Like, top dog returns to glory. Yes, Georgia finally beat Alabama last year. Yes, Michigan finally beat Ohio State, but the parallels are crazy because Michigan, like Georgia, is losing a lot of its talent on defense. 7 starters gone on defense. Aiden Hutchinson, maybe the best player on defense last year. Number 2 overall pick. Trayvon Walker, number 1. The parallels here are crazy because Michigan and Georgia had incredible defenses. Did they stop Alabama and Ohio State? No, not completely. You can't stop those offenses. They did limit them, though, because of their great defenses. They made up for, the talent gap at quarterback. Very similar. Michigan, like Georgia, didn't have as good of quarterbacks like Alabama and Ohio State, but they made up with it because of their defenses. Michigan and Georgia are going to have great defenses this year again. No question. Are they going to be as good as last year? I don't think so. Aiden Hutchinson is a huge loss for them, Heisman Trophy runner-up. So I think Ohio State has got this. C.J. Stroud is back, and he's got his running back as well. Ohio State did lose a few receivers. They have one of their big guys still back, but they've got so much talent. Talking about, like, the Georgia defensive room, the Ohio State receivers, year in, year out, they just put new guys in, and they keep delivering. So one thing to think about, too, Ohio State this year, Ohio State plays Michigan at home. Ohio State this year plays Notre Dame in the first opener at home. That'll be a good test. So Michigan did beat Ohio State last year, but that was a much better defensive team. Wasn't the best weather for that game last time out, which obviously hurts Ohio State's passing attack. So I think that this time around, Ohio State, ranked number 2 in the AP Top 25, is going to take down Michigan, kind of back to reality for the Wolverines, so to speak. So, give me Ohio State to win the Big Ten. Michigan is, going to be there. They're ranked 8th in the preseason poll. Michigan State's the other team in the equation. They're ranked 15th, but losing Kenneth Walker is going to be a huge loss.
Yeah.
And I say this, Michigan has struggled against Ohio State. They've struggled against Michigan State. Last year, they beat Ohio State. This year, they beat Michigan State, but they lose to Ohio State last game of the season. It could go down to the very last game, like last year, to see who makes the Big Ten championship, to see who wins the league, and who gets a playoff spot, to be honest, because you've got yourselves, the 2 best teams are both in the same side of the Big Ten. So last week of the season, Ohio State, Michigan, it just means more lately. So, but I'll take the Buckeyes. Better quarterback, better team. Michigan's great defense is mostly gone. So give me the Buckeyes to win the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'll go with the Buckeyes as well, kind of contrary to the Alabama-Georgia argument where you can say, hey, there's like top-end individual players where you can say Alabama has an advantage, but Georgia might have more overall depth. It doesn't really feel that way with Michigan and Ohio State. It felt that way last season, but Michigan isn't the same pipeline that Georgia has been, unfortunately, for the Big Ten and kind of like fomenting that rivalry a bit. So C.J. Stroud going, he's the Heisman favorite currently, I believe, if you're looking at odds. Certainly going to be a touted NFL prospect. And you mentioned the wide receiver room. When asked about it, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, both who went from Ohio State to the pros this past offseason, when they were asked, hey, among the 3 of you, who's the most talented receiver? Both of them said Jackson Smith and Jigba is the most talented of that trio. And both of those guys were first-round, top half of the first-round draft picks.
And he was incredible in the Rose Bowl, by the way.
Exactly. So I think that's that he's going to be a massive, massive factor this year. Trevion Henderson, of course, is going to be a pretty strong running back for Ohio State as well. So honestly, it kind of feels like maybe Notre Dame early this season, that first week matchup is going to be the toughest test that Ohio State faces all year, in part because we kind of see this early on in the season where great teams we don't really know the great teams just yet, where highly ranked teams might be butting heads, something like that. I mean, Clemson and Georgia was a 10-3 game for crying out loud last year. And look at where those 2 teams ended. One hoisting the trophy, one not even really considered for the playoff whatsoever. So I think we might have one of those situations where this first week is going to be a tough test, even though I think Ohio State and Notre Dame aren't going to really end up on similar tiers. I kind of have a little bit of that vibe this season, but definitely Ohio State. I think they should cruise right through their Big Ten schedule.
Ohio State is putting up way more than 10 points, though, week one.
Oh, for sure.
Let's be clear about that.
Yes.
They're not scoring 10 points, but
yeah.
I agree. I agree with what you're going there. Notre Dame's got a brutal schedule. We'll talk about them later as far as teams we're looking at. But Ohio State, their schedule sets up pretty nicely this year. They actually play a lot of their best teams at home. So Michigan at home. They also play Notre Dame at home. They play Iowa at home as well, Wisconsin. So I think other than, I believe, Michigan State, like all their toughest games on paper are all at home. So that'll be interesting. I'll say this too. Ohio State had that early season loss to Oregon last year. I think they're going to be more prepared for that early game against Notre Dame than they were last year.
Absolutely. Well, that brings us to the Big 12, or I guess what is soon going to be left of the Big 12. Oklahoma, Texas still in there for this season. Couple of the top 25 ranked teams with Oklahoma, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Tom, do any of those jump out at you, or are you going a little bit off the board on this one?
This is going to be a tough year, to say the least, for the Big 12 for multiple reasons. Obviously, a lot of big teams leaving the conference, but the teams this year are not great. Oklahoma is ranked 9th, Baylor 10th, Oklahoma State 12th, and all of those teams are probably overranked, to be honest. Oklahoma is losing its coach, Lincoln Riley, its quarterback, Caleb Williams. Sooners actually only have one player that's all Big 12, and that's their punter, according to the rankings before the season. So they're losing a lot of players. They're losing the coach and everything. But to be honest, everyone in this conference is losing a lot. Baylor is losing its top 2 rushers and its top 2 receivers. Oklahoma State is losing 7 starters on defense, including 6 of the top 8 tacklers. So it's really unpredictable, because we're going to see a bunch of like young players and a bunch of new starters. So it's very hard to really see what's going to happen. And unlike like Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, the young guys on these teams aren't necessarily like slam dunks. So it is very hard to predict what's going to happen. Texas is actually the second betting favorite coming off a 5-7 season, which is wild to think about. So Big 12 is going to be wildly unpredictable. Brent Venables taking over at Oklahoma. It is tough to start, with the new team. However, Oklahoma's been so dominant in the Big 12 over the last 10 years. They do have sort of that feel like an Alabama, like a Georgia, where they reload. So if I felt like there was a team with tons of returning talent, a team that looks so good on paper, I would say, yes, Oklahoma's going to be supplanted. But just because all of these other teams are also losing so many key players, I'm going to say Oklahoma still wins the Big 12. I'll say this, though. I think that every team in the league will have at least 2 losses this year. And I think there's no chance, and I say 0.0001% chance, that any of these teams have any chance at a playoff spot. Like last year, I think the Big 12 gets shut out of the top 4. It's going to be a rebuilding year, and maybe just a rebuilding conference altogether. It's going to be a tough season for the Big 12. I'm going with Oklahoma simply because of the brand recognition and just the gut feeling that they're Oklahoma. But exactly. I don't expect anything special from any of these teams.
Yeah, I don't really expect anything special either, which is, why I'm going to go outside of the AP top 25. And I'm actually going to go with Texas. Texas, who has a star running back in Bijan Robinson. Transfer portal is obviously a huge thing. They were able to pick up Quinn Ewers, who, from what little I've been able to pick up on him pretty quickly, he's a former 5-star recruit, pretty well regarded on this program. And they have enough kind of like young, talented receivers, sophomores and juniors that, with all these other teams ahead of them, ahead of Texas, with Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Baylor, why not the Longhorns? Why not have them maybe picking up a little bit of steam, a little bit of momentum as they're going to be heading into the SEC in a couple of seasons? I know they've got a tough schedule. I know they're going to be hosting Alabama. They're going to be on the road to Oklahoma and Oklahoma State before hosting Baylor at the very end of the year. So I am fully willing to accept, and I'm ready for the fact that I could be, as the kids say it, loud wrong on this.
Yes, I think you will be.
but also that can be loud right too. I think that there's going to be enough mix up in the conference where, like, I'm looking at the top three, I'm looking at the teams that are ranked, and it's just like, I don't feel super strongly about any of them heading into the season. I mean, last year, think about where things were with Oklahoma, where it's Spencer Rattler is like a Heisman favorite. Lincoln Riley is this, really talented young coach. Oklahoma is going to be great. They're going to be in the playoff, and then they kind of belly flop, end up with a QB change, the coach and quarterback leaving at the end of the year. It's a program that's in flux, and I think if you're kind of going with with the safest pick, I think Oklahoma is that, but I'm going to go bold on this one. I'm going to say the Texas Longhorns recapture the Big 12 this season.
Now, I'm trying to look this up. Last time Texas won the Big 12, which I believe to be 2009. 2009.
Was that Vince Young or
no? That was when I was a freshman in college. Colt McCoy.
Okay. Wow.
Vince Young was 05. Colt McCoy 09.
I did not realize. I thought Colt McCoy was a lot older than that. But yeah, no, that was the next guess. So yeah, Big 12, we've got
real quickly, Tom, to say, I know history is one thing, it's something else, but to go from 5-7 to conference champions is just a long step. It's just my gut feeling. Like I said, all these teams have very new looks. It's hard to predict, but I don't buy into Texas. I just don't.
I mean, Steve Sarkisian is definitely a talented coach as far as, we've seen him at Alabama as their offensive coordinator at the pro level in the NFL for the Falcons. So
and he didn't do the same as a head coach, though. Different responsibilities.
Oh, absolutely. But last year was his first year at Texas.
Did not go well.
Get his feet a little bit wet. He's a little bit more used to that role. I'm saying, I'm just justifying my long shot.
You got to make a bold prediction. We're out here going chalk. So, okay, I get it. I'm just saying I would almost pick like someone other than Texas. I don't know who off the top of my head, but I just do not trust. I do not trust in Texas football. That's all I'll say.
They certainly have not been justifying their fans' expectations as of late, but this year might be a different year. Another team or another conference where some expectations were kind of upended was the ACC, where Wake Forest ended up taking the ACC title last year, something that none of us saw coming. I believe we were all in on Clemson.
So was everyone else.
As was everyone else. Everybody definitely disappointed last year. Clemson, oddly enough, or as poorly as they started, ended on a pretty high note.
Sure did.
As far as the season went. So, I'm guessing you and I will be in lockstep on this one. I think Clemson is going to return to where they typically are. I think GJ Uyunglele is going to be really good for them at quarterback after struggling a bit last year. Their defense is going to get better this season. And quite frankly, ACC isn't that strong of a conference. I think the Tigers take this pretty handily.
I think so for sure. Clemson ranked 4th in the AP Top 25 poll. NC State 13, Miami 16, Pittsburgh 17 with losing Kenny Pickett, and Wake Forest, a really shocking team from last year, 22. So I was actually, you kind of led into what I have written down here. Yeah, Clemson started tough. They were 2-2. One of those losses was to Georgia. Mm-hmm. They did go 9-1 down the stretch last season. They won their bowl game. Was a different looking team. Clemson should be the team to beat. Their offensive line is back. Their top 3 running backs are back. Their quarterback is back. So Clemson here. But I'm going to say this. One team to look out for, the Miami Hurricanes. They are a great team. Tyler Van Dyke could be a first-round pick at quarterback. He is an excellent player. So I got Clemson to win, but Miami is going to make it a little bit tougher than a lot of people think. So look out for Miami to put up a fight. Clemson ultimately, though, top dog in the ACC, back to reality in 2022.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one, Common, as far on both fronts. Quite frankly, looking at the top 25, I'm not really understanding the love for the Pittsburgh Panthers losing
Kenny
not only
Pickett.
Kenny Pickett, but
Yeah.
also Addison, their star receiver from last year. He went over to USC.
I don't know.
So, I mean, I'm not super deep in the weeds on Pittsburgh Panthers football. Maybe there's something there that we're not seeing, but just kind of like looking up and down this conference, I see 5 teams that are in the top 25. I think we're going to see significantly fewer by the time the season is over.
Yeah,
I think
a little surprising.
I think the Demon Deacons, I'm blanking because I saw this news tidbit a little while ago. I think they have a player who's going to be out for like the entire year. And he was a significant player. I don't know if it was a quarterback or a running back, something
And
along those lines.
NC State, Miami, and Clemson will be in the top 25. Those other teams will not be.
Yeah, their quarterback Hartman is listed as out indefinitely, but coach said they do expect him to return at some point this season. I'm just not sure when that's going to be. So yeah, I don't see Wake Forest really making much noise. So I mean, Clemson is the top dog. They are the proverbial blue blood in this conference. I guess if they can ascend to blue blood status in such a short period of time, that's I guess a conversation for a different.
It feels like it.
It feels like it. Yes, yeah. They're a new age blue blood team. I fully expect them to take the conference, and I mean, this kind of leads into the next a later segment, but I think playoff is definitely within their range of outcomes.
They got a real shot. Well, I'm going back and forth on that, so I'll tease that in a second because I am so torn on that question. So we'll get to that in a little bit.
Absolutely. Moving on to the Pac-12, we've got Oregon just outside the top 10 at 11. We have Utah at number 7.
Yeah.
USC returning to the top 25. They were ranked in the top 25 last season, did not do very well, but of course, bring in a great head coach, bring in a top quarterback, a good receiver. The transfer portal really is doing wonders for college football programs and being able to turn around things a lot faster than they usually or used to be able to do. So it looks like there's some pretty strong teams at the top of the conference. I think one stands out head and shoulders above the rest. But Common, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I actually think I'm going gut feeling here. I'm going to go gut feeling here. You know me, Tom. I love statistics. I analyze statistics, but once in a while, you just got to go with your gut. The stats, by the way, do prove that Lincoln Riley and Caleb Williams have been great together. Utah, like on paper, number 7. Yeah, they should be the top team. But I'm going to take USC here. I really like Lincoln Riley. I actually felt that he overachieved a little bit at Oklahoma. Yes, he's going into a new system. It's a new team, but he's got his quarterback. Those two guys know each other. Having a quarterback and a coach who are together, literally. Caleb Williams loves his coach because he transferred there with him. So they've got the most important relationship down when it comes to, a coach and player, coach and quarterback. So I know Utah on paper, they even host USC. They should be the one to win on paper. Oregon's been, quite frankly, the class of this league, in the last 5 years or so. Kayvon Thibodeau is gone, though, for Oregon. I just have a gut feeling here USC is going to be really good. I'm going to just base it literally on Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley. Like, it's just those two guys are like an incredible coach and quarterback duo. Lincoln Riley has been able to do wonders, taking over immediately at Oklahoma after Bob Stoops. I know he had great recruits. He did wonders with those quarterbacks. I mean, like Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, they were even better in college than they are in the pros. So I got to give Lincoln Riley a lot of credit for what he's done with all those players. Give me USC to take home the Pac-12. Trojans are back on top.
Absolutely. That's where I'm going with as well. Even though they're the third team listed in the top 25 for the Pac-12, they are the top betting favorite to win the conference. And I mean, why not? They're going to be at Utah in mid-October. That's right in the heart of the season. Certainly going to be a tough matchup because Utah seemed to have everybody's number in the Pac-12 last season. And then, of course, closing out hosting Notre Dame in that classic rivalry. But look at the rest of the schedule. I don't see where the challenges are for this USC team. I think they have a fairly easy cakewalk to getting to the Pac-12 championship game. And at that point, I know there's a lot of different transfers and a lot of different moving pieces all coming together. But by that point, the teams come together. They're either falling apart or they're clicking at that point. They shouldn't be figuring things out one way or another. We should know definitively. I'm thinking definitively they're going to be the best team in the conference. So I have no problem picking them to win the entire conference as well.
Sweet.
So that wraps up with our conference previews as far as picking out the winners, at least as far as the big teams go. Of course, last year we had some interesting outcomes with Cincinnati. The Bearcats, I jumped on their bandwagon all season long. Brought them to the playoffs, which was a lot of fun. And
then they broke your heart.
They broke. They showed where the shortcomings are. Yeah, exactly. It was. Let's hope for a little bit of a miracle for the underdog, because that's what sports are all about. But ultimately came up short in that regard. So, are there any Group of Five or independent teams that you're looking out for, or do you think it's going to be kind of like an empty year for them as far as at least getting into the college football playoff?
I definitely think it's going to be an empty year, because I don't think there's a team that's good enough to do it. And I think there's enough good teams out there with USC and Clemson, two teams I'm looking at as back to relevance. But I'll give you a couple teams that you could look out for. So if there's one, if they can get some upsets and get some big wins, and obviously it's a big program, Notre Dame is the obvious answer. They're an independent team. So Notre Dame is ranked 5th in the preseason poll. They play at number 2 Ohio State. They play 4th-ranked Clemson this year. They play at 14th USC. So if they can somehow win 2 out of 3 there, they've got a real shot at the playoff. I'm on the side of they lose 2 out of 3, though. So I don't think Notre Dame is going to be in the playoff with 2 losses. Cincinnati is the other obvious answer. They're ranked 23rd in the country. Yes, they lost Desmond Ridder at quarterback. I know they lost some players, but that program knows how to win. They know how to win. They play at Arkansas, the first game of the season. They lose at 19th ranked Arkansas. The playoff is over right there. However, if they can beat Arkansas, a road game against an SEC team, then their schedule looks really easy. And if they beat Arkansas, run the table, they got a shot. I'm going to say that they don't beat Arkansas. I'm going to say that Cincinnati does not get in the playoff, but that's a team to look out for. And then otherwise, BYU at 25. They've got a tough schedule too. They play Baylor, Oregon, Arkansas, Notre Dame. So if they can somehow win 3 out of 4 there, they would be in the running. But I have a feeling they'll go 2-2, 1-3. So I don't really think there is a Group of 5 team really that scares me. And even Notre Dame at 5th as an independent, they've got a brutal schedule. So I don't think anyone's going to be in the playoff this year. That's, a little guy or even a big guy like Notre Dame as an independent.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that one, because, we kind of needed like a magic secret sauce thing that even let Cincinnati. I mean, ACC, kaput. Pac-12, nothing. Big 12, nothing as far as getting to the college football playoff. Just there were no teams that stood out in those conferences, which is what allowed an undefeated Cincinnati team to get in with not necessarily a super strong resume. Cleaned up nicely against all their different opponents. Had a couple of, I'd say, like medium to difficult games, but certainly not to the same level of, you're playing Michigan and Michigan State and Wisconsin every year type of deal. So I think it's really difficult for an independent or Group of 5 to crack into this current playoff format. Notre Dame is the one team that can do it, because you mentioned they have a really, really difficult schedule. I don't see them winning the Ohio State game. I don't see them winning the USC game or the Clemson game.
They could lose all of them. They could go 0-3 there.
That's 3 right there. But, of course, they have the greatest opportunity that if they take care of business and win 1 out of those 3 or go 2-1 out of those matchups,
well, they got to go. They got to go 2-1. If they go 1-2, they had no shot with 2 losses. No shot, because those are their toughest games. Got to say, like, you at least had a winning record in your resume. So
I mean, like, yeah, I would say like if they did something where like losing at OSU and losing against Clemson, but say they beat USC and they clean up the rest of the schedule. If we're looking at it as
I
Clemson
don't
and
see it.
Ohio State are already in for that playoff, I mean, like that gets them to the conversation.
It's a tough sell.
It's a tough
It's
sell,
a
but at
tough
least
sell.
keeps them in that conversation.
And
They
it's
got
going to
to
be
win
tough.
one of those two games.
And yeah, I don't see it.
Yeah.
To me, it's a tough sell, Tom.
I agree, but like it's if they do win one of those two games, they're absolutely the one team out of this big.
But if they do win,
I don't see.
If they win two of them, though, then they might be in.
Oh, for
That's
sure.
what they need.
Yeah, but I'm saying between those two big games, Clemson, OSU, if they go 1-1 in that, I mean, they definitely could be. Assuming, like, of course, they win the rest of the schedule, that they would certainly get in.
Sure.
It's just I don't really necessarily see a flop in the Pac-12 this season in the ACC. You know, as long as Big Ten's going to have a rep, SEC is going to have 1 to 2 reps, which means between Pac-12 and ACC, that's going to be. You think it's definitely going to be 2?
I mean,
probably.
How could you not put Alabama and Georgia in after what we've seen the last few years? It's like whenever you put them both in, they meet in the championship game.
Yeah.
Just if it's fair, Alabama and Georgia are both 2 top 4 teams.
Yeah.
That's true. It's factually accurate. So
yeah, it's if anything you can make the case, but yeah, that's not very likely to happen. So speaking of the playoff, perfect timing. So we've got 4 teams to make the playoffs. I mean, in my head, I'm probably like, oh, there's 6 teams that can make 4 spots, which means I got to pare things down a little bit. So we'll probably just go like process of elimination. I think we can both say Ohio State's in, right?
Ohio State absolutely is in. Michigan is their toughest game. Notre Dame, their other toughest game, both at home. CJ Stroud, Heisman Trophy favorites. Love Ohio State. Buckeyes are in, yes.
All right, so that brings us to, let's go. Actually, we probably should have gone with them first. The reigning champions, the Georgia Bulldogs. I obviously have them as in because I have them winning the SEC. You have them losing to Alabama. Do they get in despite having a championship loss, kind of an about face from last season?
Well, they're the opposite of Alabama. Alabama had Alabama had a loss last year, got in. I know it wasn't, they won the championship, but if Georgia goes undefeated in regular season play and loses in the SEC title game, like last year, it's exactly what happened. They're getting in again. Georgia is absolutely deserving. They're going to beat Oregon in their non-con schedule. It's going to be a good win. They'll play at Atlanta, Georgia, by the way, against Oregon. Almost a de facto home game for the Bulldogs. So 1 loss to Alabama. I can say this with pretty high confidence. If you have a season, you lose 1 game, and it's to Alabama in the SEC, you deserve to make the playoff. Georgia is in. And they'll be the 3 seed because I've got Alabama as 1, Tom. So I've got Bama as 1, number 1 seed. They play A&M at home. They've got the better quarterback. Georgia has lost 8 starters on defense, 5 first-round picks. Alabama has 10 starters back on defense. Will Anderson back. I like Alabama over Georgia. Georgia's going to get the 3 seed, by the way, because I don't think they're going to put Alabama and Georgia going up against each other. You might have them flipped. Georgia 1, Bama 3, or do you put Alabama in if they have 1 loss against Georgia? I mean,
yeah, but I would have them flipped because since I have Georgia winning the conference, like by virtue of that, I probably have like Georgia 1 that makes Ohio State 2, Bama 3, just because they're not going to want that SEC rematch right away.
No, not going to happen.
Which of course then leaves the 4th spot, which is where I get to the point where it's like, yeah, I have 5 teams making the playoffs. So I guess where are you going for this last spot, this crucial, pivotal 4th spot?
I am so torn here. I have gone back and forth, Tom, on this. Back and forth I go. My head says to pick Clemson because Clemson is a great program. They've got a lot of guys returning. They've got a great coach. They've been there. But then I look at this, and then it's like I look at the top 4 rankings, and it's like Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, and Clemson. And I'm essentially going to put them in the playoff in that exact order. Not only do I have all 4 of those teams in, I've got the 1 seed is Alabama, the 2 seed is Ohio State, the 3 is Georgia, the 4 is Clemson. It is very, very rare that top 4 teams go, especially in that order, all make the playoffs. So on paper, going into the season, those are the 4 best teams. It would not surprise me if that's what happens. But I'm going to go ahead and pick one upset. I've been going chalk. Got to pick an upset somewhere. And like I said earlier, I'm a man of stats, but I also have a gut feeling we're probably going the same place. USC Trojans is where I'm headed. Caleb Williams transferring in at quarterback. He's the other Heisman Trophy favorite. We'll get to that here in a second. Let's do the Heisman Trophy 2 after this real fast. But Caleb Williams behind Bryce Young and behind CJ Stroud is the best college quarterback. He's going to be good in the NFL. He may not be as good as some of these other guys because he's, an incredible runner. He's a good passer, but strictly because of running ability at the college level, he is hands down the 3rd best quarterback, if not 1 or 2. And he's got Lincoln Riley, who is a top 3 coach. I mean, you look at the best coaches, it's like Saban, Kirby Smart. Obviously, we have Dabo in the conversation, and then Lincoln Riley. And then it's like Dabo and Riley. I got to choose between those guys. That's a tough call in itself. But just a gut feeling with USC. I think they've got a great player. I think they've got a better quarterback than Clemson. So give me USC to get that 4th spot. They will go either undefeated or maybe lose 1 game only this year. So USC gets that 4th slot.
Yeah, I'm going to have USC going undefeated as well and getting the 4th spot by virtue of, the college football playoff, because they don't want Alabama, Georgia lining up with each other. They'll say, well, USC didn't have as difficult of an in-conference schedule, so their undefeated is not worth as much as yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. So I have USC as well. And really, I mean, looking at the betting, that's not all that much of an upset. If you look at the odds, you've got the Crimson Tide, the Buckeyes, the Bulldogs are all under that plus 500 mark, so heavy favorites. And then that last spot, you got plus 800 for Clemson, plus 2,000 for the Trojans, plus 2,500 for the Aggies. And then you've got another big drop off to where you get to the Sooners, the Wolverines, the Irish at 5,000 plus, or plus 5,000 and up. So really, it feels, because they're preseason ranked 14, like a bit of an upset to pick USC. But I think a lot of people are thinking kind of along similar lines that you and I are common in saying, hey, this is a team that is definitely capable. I'd say, I don't know, like it feels almost weird and kind of wrong for us to have the same picks.
Well, we're going to have a different pick for national championship and national title game, Tom. I can guarantee you that.
You know what? Like Clemson's schedule, I mean, that's a pretty good one too. I think Clemson, you know what? I'm going to go in no particular order.
Oh, gosh. Here we
go. Georgia, OSU, Clemson, and USC. I think we get one from each conference. I'm shutting out Alabama. I'm shutting out Alabama. Why not? Why not? They're only like the top ranked or favorite team.
Tom Castle.
Jimbo Fisher goes in to Tuscaloosa.
Alabama is always in the playoff. They missed the playoff like
they lose in the championship game. 2 losses.
What is it?
Titles.
Once or twice ever since the system got in college football playoff. Like Alabama's like a staple.
Yeah, I mean their schedule's pretty soft. Their schedule's
you're just messing with
kind of
me.
like 10 ply soft. I don't know, I'm trying to think of a way to be a little bit different, because like I reached the same conclusion and we're both right there.
Well, just
and we were both right there last year. We were just kind of like all wrong about it. I don't know. If you like, I'm going to stick with the original of Georgia, OSU, Alabama, and USC.
Better,
but I'm going to be pulling for Alabama to make it, because I think that would just be fun. I think that'd be fun.
Oh my gosh. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you my national championship prediction, because I think this right here would be fun. And this is reason to cheer for Alabama. So as good as Clemson and USC are on paper to me, and we kind of said this last year, and we've said this in the last few years, the three best teams in the country that are, to me, a whole step ahead of everyone else are Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia. Those are the three top teams. They're all fantastic. Alabama's got, like I mentioned, 10 starters back on defense, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, best coach in Nick Saban. Alabama will get the 1 seed. They will make the national championship game. Here's where it gets interesting. Ohio State, I've got as the 2, as the Big Ten champ, probably undefeated. They would play Georgia as the 3 seed. Now, that is going to be a heck of a college playoff game. That 1-4 matchup, Alabama versus Clemson or USC, probably going to be a blowout like normal. The 2-3, some years have been close, some years blowouts. More recently, it was a blowout. This year, it's going to be close. Ohio State, Georgia is going to be an incredible football game. But, like I said earlier, Georgia has the worst quarterback in this matchup. Yes, they had the worst quarterback last year in the championship game, but they had maybe the best defense in college football history. Think about that. They were allowing less than 10 points per game. Other than that one game against Bama, they were unbelievable the whole season. So they lost 8 players, 5 first-round picks, Trayvon Walker, number 1 overall pick. That Georgia defense is going to be very good, but not the same. They don't have enough to compensate to stop Alabama like they were able to last year to limit them. So I've got C.J. Stroud and Ohio State's talented offense takes down Georgia. Then the national championship is Alabama and Ohio State. And it's a battle for the number 1 overall pick. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, 2 best quarterbacks in college football. Whoever wins that national title likely is the number 1 overall pick. Think about that. Those 2 guys can cement their legacy. So I'm going to go with, of course, Alabama. I think Alabama's got a better defense. They've got a better coach. Bama over Ohio State for the future number 1 pick. C.J. Stroud does great, but Bryce Young wins. Bryce Young and Alabama win the championship. Roll Tide, baby.
So I'm going a little bit different, but pretty much following along the same lines. It's just I'm going to have OSU over Alabama in that semifinal game. And then I'm going to go with OSU over Georgia in the championship. OSU winning the first college football playoff or the first college football championship as they went to that playoff setting. And I think they have the talent and the firepower to do it again this year. I think that, as you said, Georgia, not the same level of defense as they had last year. I think that the pairing of Stroud and Smith and Jigba is just going to be fantastic. And then, of course, you've got Trevian Henderson on the ground and just some other up-and-coming receivers that we're probably going to see break out of Ohio State's wide receiver room and make a little bit of noise this year, make a name for themselves that we're going to be hearing about a lot as Saturdays go on for the football playoffs. So I like Ohio State. Been a minute since the Big Ten has won it. They won the first one and haven't won since. It's been pretty much just SEC teams and Clemson. So this year I'm going to go with the old Midwest Big Ten pick, like I probably do more often than I should.
And I go with Alabama, I feel like most years, and I am roughly 50%, Tom. And I like those odds. I like those odds, especially since they didn't win last year. So I like my odds for Alabama.
Absolutely. Well, that wraps
real
for
quickly,
the most part the teams, at least.
Just want to do the Heisman Trophy real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I'm trying to look for the odds right now on the Heisman. I'm pretty sure that it's C.J. Stroud is currently the number 1. I think part of that is because nobody's won back-to-back since it was blanking. He played for OSU, I think, like in the 70s, where he won back-to-back Heismans, but nobody's won back-to-back since. Of course, Bryce Young winning last year, which kind of leads me to believe that unless Bryce Young is so much better, he's not going to win it this year. So I'm already just like eliminating him, as unfair as that may seem.
I've got the odds, by the way.
Okay, go for it.
C.J. Stroud plus 200, Bryce Young plus 350, Caleb Williams plus 700, Will Anderson plus 2,000, Bijan Robinson plus 2,000. Those are the 5 favorites. But basically, if you look at the odds, it's Stroud, Young are far ahead. Caleb Williams somewhat within reach.
Yeah. So for me, my pick is going to be Caleb Williams out of USC. Like slight little bit of a long shot.
Sure.
It's not like what I'm about to throw out isn't necessarily predictive.
Sure.
But the preseason odds-on favorite to win the Heisman hasn't actually won the Heisman since I think it was Marcus Mariota back in 2009. Outside of that player that year. Now, that's not to say that CJ Stroud certainly can't do it. I absolutely think that it's between him and Caleb Williams for that. I just think that there's probably going to be a little bit of a bias if USC, say, goes undefeated, because they have a fairly soft schedule. If they return to the college football playoff, even though it's a regular season award, I mean, that's going to be enough for people to kind of get caught up in the USC Trojan fervor of like, oh, they're back and they have this amazing quarterback and everything. I think that like the hype train a little bit is what's going to overtake what's going to be, I think, a really great season for CJ Stroud at Ohio State. And Ohio State is going to be excellent like they always are, but it might seem a little bit like blasé to stick with that favorite. So I'm going to go with Caleb Williams. What? A little blasé.
What's blasé?
It's just kind of like a bland, like, oh, of course, like it's a blasé pick to go with Alabama to win the title. There's no flash or substance to it. They're so good for so long, it's almost boring.
I'm going to go blasé, Tom.
Go for CJ Stroud. I mean, he's right there. Like it's 1-1 with him and Caleb Williams. I'm just going to play a little bit of that statistical anomaly if I'm picking.
And Bryce Young has a real shot to win it too. To be fair, but like we said, it's very hard to win it twice. On that alone, I'm going to go CJ Stroud just slightly ahead of Bryce Young. Caleb Williams is going to be great. He might even have the cumulative stats if you can factor in the rushing. Definitely going to be a quarterback. Quarterbacks almost always win it unless you have a Smith historic season on the receiving end. But I'm going to say CJ Stroud is going to be the guy. By the way, I am very high on CJ Stroud. I watched the Rose Bowl last year, and I was blown away at his accuracy, his touch on his ball. I know Ohio State quarterbacks don't succeed at the NFL level traditionally, but he's going to be the first to do it, I feel like. He's going to be, I'm talking like could be Hall of Famer. I love proclaiming guys early, but I am very high on CJ Stroud. I really think that he's also got the best receiver. Like, as good as Bryce Young is, he doesn't have, like, how do you pronounce his name? I'm so bad at saying it. You were so good at it earlier. Ohio State's, like,
Jackson Smith and Jigba?
Yeah, that's it. Like, he is so good. I watched him in the Rose Bowl. He was so good. Like, those two together are going to be incredible this year. So, give me CJ Stroud for the Heisman this year.
Smith and Jigba could be so good that he kind of split some votes with CJ Stroud. Something to keep a little bit of an eye on as well. But certainly exciting to see both the teams and then, of course, the individual players as well. Because, nobody, for example, had Kenny Pickett last season as a finalist preseason, and then he had a fantastic year. So it'll be nice to see, or interesting to see, rather, who are some of these other guys that might pop up over the season? Is Will Anderson perhaps going to be somebody that closes ground if he has another spectacular season? Lots and lots of fun storylines for that particular award this year.
More Kenny Pickett talk a little later, by the way.
Oh, a little bit of a call ahead to a later segment. But first, really quickly, we'll touch on betting locks of the week. I think as a show, we were slightly below 500, but Common, you buoyed us a little bit.
I did good. And actually, Tom, I've got us at over 500.
Okay, what did I miss?
Nope, you're right. It is under 500. So I was 2-1 last week. I had the Cardinals minus 1.5 over the Rockies at plus 105. Got a little profit boost on the good old DraftKings and cashed in big on that game as well. So 5-1 Cards over the Rockies. Cardinals are playing insane baseball right now, looking like a great team. Mets Braves under 7.5 runs. I missed that badly. 16 runs in that game. PSG Lille over 3.5 goals at plus 135. This was 7-1 PSG. Talk about resting easy on that one. Tom, you were 1-2. Cards over Rockies. You got that right. You had Giants -1.5 over the D-backs. D-backs won 3-2. Dodgers -1.5 over the Brewers. Dodgers win 2-1 by just one. Drew was 1-2. Got the Bears +3.5 against the Seahawks. Bears winning outright. EPL, Fulham, Brentford under 2.5 goals. That was wrong. 5 total goals. And then Cardinals +6 versus the Ravens. Ravens winning 24-17. The preseason king Ravens with another win, another cover. So, Tom, we'll talk more later on this, but if this is our last betting locks of the week, because I know we have the NFL preview next week, and then the following week, we just get into the new season of locks. And I know we're going to be extensive on the preview. This might be the last week. And even if it's not, you've pretty much clinched the title right now. So you are betting locks of the week champion for season 2. We tied in season 1. Shout out to Tom finishing over 500 and taking home locks of the week. For this week, though, Drew's got the Chiefs. He had them at +3 over the Packers. I see the line at +1 now. So I'm going to have Chiefs +1 for Drew. Commanders +6 against the Ravens. And EPL Leeds United Brighton under 2.5 goals. What do you got?
Actually, I'm going to have you go first because I'm still writing mine down really quickly.
Okay, sounds good. Last minute locks. So I'm going to go opposite Drew bracket. I'm going to take the Ravens -6 over the Commanders. The Ravens have won an NFL record 22 straight preseason games. You kidding me? Preseason kings, Baltimore Ravens. By the way, they won 24-17, 23-10. Both of their games so far. They covered in both games. They won by 7 or more in both. Commanders are 0-2 in the preseason. That is a losing franchise. Whether it's the regular season, the postseason, they can change their names. It doesn't matter. They're just bad. So Commanders lost by 10 last week. Give me Ravens to win by 7 or more. I'm going to go with what's been working. I have bet on the PSG over 2 weeks in a row.
There you go. I'm
going to bet the PSG over until I lose. I don't see why not, because these guys are scoring an insane amount of goals. So PSG Monaco over 4 goals at -102 on Bovada. 4 goals is a wash, Tom. So if they get 4, I would tie. PSG, their 3 league games so far: 5-0, 5-2, 7-1 last week. Messi, Mbappe, and Neymar all scored last week. It took 8 seconds for them to score. Messi to Mbappe, 8 seconds in, goal PSG. Mbappe and Neymar seem to be playing well together. Those conflicts put aside, PSG is rolling. They're scoring tons of goals. They've got the top 3 leading goal scorers in the French league right now. All teammates, top 3 leading goal scorers. Plenty more goals coming for PSG. 5 goals in that game total should be no problem. Then lastly, I've got the Mariners -1.5 over the Nationals at -120 on DraftKings. Nats are terrible, really bad. They're 53-70 against the spread. Mariners 62-60 against the spread. Seattle's at home. Robbie Ray's on the mound. He's been great. 3 straight quality starts. Better pitcher, better team at home. Mariners should win by 2 or more. No problem tonight.
All right, so I've got my lock sets. First off, I'll go with the most sure-looking bet. Give me Giants -1.5 runs against the Tigers, squeaking this in right underneath our threshold at -125. Carlos Rodon on the mound for the Giants has been absolutely fantastic. So give me the Giants tonight, Tuesday night. Give me Padres Guardians in the first 5. Padres -0.5 a run in the first 5 innings. You can get that for -110. They've been having some bullpen blowups, which is why I'm not as keen on the -1.5 for the whole game. Although if you wanted to do that, +140 on that. And then Tony Gonsolin and Corbin Burns, a couple of Cy Young candidates going for the Dodgers and Brewers. So for those first 5 innings of the game before we get into bullpens, under 3.5 runs in the first 5 innings scored.
I was eyeing that total at under 7 for the game. So that was like, I had 4 things written down, excluded that one, but that's one I was eyeing. So there you go.
Absolutely. So yeah, those are the locks of the week. Certainly going to be interesting to see how things go before we start getting into NFL season, gearing up for that a little bit and getting back to something that's pretty familiar. Definitely the most popular thing for folks to bet on as the NFL season goes on.
No question.
Sports trivia of the week. Comment if you've got one, because I went last week. Go ahead. Otherwise, I've got a really, really good one for baseball.
Okay, we can both do one. We'll get it in here quickly. I'll
skip my statement of the week because I don't really have anything on that. So let's go to trivia and then your statement.
All right. So I've got myself a fun one here.
Mm-hmm.
What player has the most home runs, or what players hit more home runs against more? Let me word this correctly.
I think we have the same trivia.
Oh, no. What two players have homered off the most pitchers, and how many home runs have they hit off? How many different pitchers have they hit a home run off of? Do we have the same trivia?
We do have the same trivia. The way phrased it was on Monday, Albert Pujols homered off of Cubs pitcher Drew Smyly, tying him with Barry Bonds for the most different pitchers homered on all time. Can you guess the number of different pitchers that is? And the answer...
449.
449, which is a testament to just how dominant that they are. That's like a mind-boggling number to think about. Talent and longevity.
I've got one more then. Another one I saw on SportsCenter. It's the same sort of same feel trivia question. Same guy. So Albert Pujols has 7 home runs in 10 games.
Mm-hmm.
He is the oldest player to hit 7 home runs in 10 games. Who was the previous oldest? Saw this on SportsCenter.
Who was later on in their career. So, I mean, because it was just in the last trivia, I'm guessing it's not Barry Bonds. So I would say fellow Cardinal Stan the Man Musial.
Not Stan the Man. This is a player that we both like. And old school legend.
Old school legend, and we both like him.
I think you like
Ted Williams?
Ted Williams.
I like Ted Williams.
Yeah. How can you not? He's a legend.
First, whenever I hear about old baseball, for a slight moment, I conflict Ted Williams with Ty Cobb, who I'm pretty sure this has been debunked, but Ty Cobb was accused of killing a drifter or something like that.
I don't know.
I'm 99.9% sure that's debunked.
I don't know where the evidence is.
That's the thing. I think it's more urban legend than anything.
Sure.
But yeah, it's kind of funny how we both saw that trivia. That's the beautiful thing about Twitter is people mention something like that. I take a quick screenshot on occasion. If we're following some of the similar people, we'll see the same thing. But that's just
I caught it on SportsCenter, but I do a lot of the Twitter stuff like you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So caught it on SportsCenter. All right, statement of the week. You say you don't have anything, or do you want?
Yeah, I don't have, and I think I was pretty bold enough with picking Texas to win the Big 12. So I don't know if I get much bolder than that. So I'll let you go ahead to wrap up the show.
I don't think my statement of the week is necessarily bold. I know sometimes I have some very bold stuff that I say. This one it's not bold, but I feel like it's something that might not happen, but it should. So here's my statement. Kenny Pickett should be the starting quarterback for the Steelers week 1. Week 1. Why wait around? Kenny Pickett is clearly the better quarterback than Mitch Trubisky. The first preseason game, 13 of 15, 95 yards, 2 touchdowns. Yeah, it was against the backups. It was with the second, third string offense. He got in with the first string offense the last game. 6 of 7, 76 pass yards, and a touchdown. Tom, you said this yourself. Kenny Pickett is a gamer. He's a game player. He's a good player. He's got talent, but his talent doesn't scream off the screen for you. He doesn't have a Patrick Mahomes arm, but the dude just knows how to play football. Put up prolific numbers in college. Way better than Mitch Trubisky was in college.
Mm-hmm.
We've already seen Mitch Trubisky play in the NFL enough. There is no way that Kenny Pickett is not the better quarterback right now, too. Forget about in 2-3 weeks. Kenny Pickett is the better quarterback. The Steelers are just going to waste their time if they don't name him the starter right away. he's going to give him a better chance to win week 1 than Trubisky. I fully believe that. He is a first-round pick. He's a kid out of Pittsburgh. He knows the area. Obviously, has learned the offense pretty quickly. So, Kenny Pickett should be the week 1 starter. Don't mess around, Pittsburgh. Give him the keys. I saw an argument on ESPN saying Trubisky will be the starter because you can't start Pickett and then move away from him. If you start Trubisky, he doesn't do good, then you can move away from him to the rookie. But my thought is, why waste your time now? This is your future. He's the better player. You learn by doing. That's Missouri method, also NFL method. It is 2022. Quarterbacks play right away, and they do great right away. You know, Russell Wilson did great right away. Mahomes, he sat 1 year, but, he was great right away when he got his chance. It's time for Kenny Pickett to get his chance and get that starting job in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no real strong argument from me on that point. I mean, we saw Mitchell Trubisky. The only thing I can think of is, okay, he's young enough and at least theoretically talented enough that with a good coaching staff, could he be something more? I don't know at this point. It's kind of late on in a career to make that sort of transition from mediocre to good. Yeah, I mean, that's we still have one preseason game left for everybody, so maybe Pickett will make enough of a difference that he'll force Pittsburgh's hand and make him the starting quarterback on week 1. Probably not going to happen, quite frankly, but I certainly think that if he's got the talent to play, he should play. And again, like the thing I said last week, if the guys around him know that he's good enough to play, the coaching staff has to make that move.
And the fan base, fan pressure. I'm telling you, Steelers Nation, they want Pickett.
Yep.
Listen, Mike Tomlin, I know you're a great coach. Listen and follow what everyone else wants. Put Pickett in. So that's going to do it for us this week, Tom. Next week, NFL season preview. I want to do the preview next week because the following week we can talk about week 1. So full NFL season preview next week. Cannot wait for that. Thanks again on a great show. And I will see you next week. Our fantasy draft next week as well. So a lot of stuff to get into next week. All right, Tom. Thanks, man.
See ya.
And thanks to all the listeners and viewers. You guys are great. We will see you next week.